So in this video, we're going to show off the player class that we have. The player class is, well, the player that gets controlled. As you can see, we have a factory pool set up for the player so that we can constantly recycle whatever players that we need. Factory is a very simple singleton. It has its pointer instance. If it's not doesn't exist, it returns a new one. And we have our little null pointer up here and our terminate that we call when the game is ended. So the pool also has a stack that returns a new player if there's no new player to create. Otherwise, it returns a already existing player. And if we look in the factory real quick, yes, we have the set external management. So the player itself. Let's start with the header class, actually. We have a lot of forward declarations for the player. Forward declarations are very useful. Thank you for showing them to us. So, as you see, we have our update, draw, destroy, fairly basic. We have our set input, and we have all of these functions that the input manager is going to call. We have two different functions for outside other entities to use. Bullet destroyed for the bullet to inform it as a sort of a observer pattern. And then we have all the different collisions that we have within the game. And finally, we have all of our different variables. We have our input. These are speed is whatever the game designers want to change it to. These are simply for tracking position and collision management. And then we have position. Max height determines how high up the player can go. Again, the designers can change that at will. It's within one function. It's one line of code. Max bullets, again, so they can change to whatever. And we have our sound of death. So, in the initialize function, this is where we set up all of the things that we use no matter what. Again, speed, max bullets, max height. They can change it to whatever they want it to be. And we also set up things that will never change from player to player. The sprite, collision, draw order, sound, things like that. Initialize is where player to player stuff is different. So we reset max bullets so that we can say, okay, this is how many we have. To prevent, there was a bug where if the player died while the bullet was on screen, then the next time the player respawned, they couldn't shoot, for example. This is just to prevent that. Start X and start Y, and prev X, prev Y are just for collision to determine where they respawn, and yada yada. Destroy and set input, fairly basic. Input sets the input. An update, it just moves, changes its location, and then clamps it to within the appropriate player area. And it also calls on the input manager to check its input. Since the input manager and player are very closely linked, I will be getting to that in a short bit. We have all of our move and fire functions, which just alter where the position of the player is. And we have all of our collision events. Other than the mushroom, they all result in death. They are all very similar. I'm not very sure. I wasn't quite sure how to compress them all. Perhaps I could use the base class that I have now. However, this was low on my list of priorities, and I never got around to compressing all of this code. So for now, it will stay as it is. The mushroom, we simply revert whatever move we just did. And then we have the rest. On destruction, we delete our sound death because every sound is unique. The sound and score manager create new commands. They are not pointers to commands that they hold. Again, this was because of my original implementation, and then later on I found out that that was required. However, it was low on my list of priorities, and I never got around to it. So for now, that's how it is. However, it works, so that's fine. player manager is in charge of controlling the various players, the various mushroom fields, and it is a massive beast to get into. And we will get into that later on, because we are simply scrolling down through this. However, we're going to alter the order, as I said, and go to the inputs first. The parent class is the input manager. It has the two functions both of them use, getPlayer and checkInput. And the CPP file is very blank. So let's look at AI Manager first. Again, checkInput, getPlayer. We have two variables controlling our movement, and then pointer to the ship and our position. And again, if we stay at the same place, we just swap our direction, and then otherwise we just move in that direction. And we fire every frame that we can. Keyboard Manager, again, checkInput and getPlayer. And then our checkInput has this huge if branch, but it's basically unavoidable, sadly, because we have to check if these keys are being held down. There's no way to get around it. So sadly, we have 7 if statements every update. But oh well. We have our mute, unmute, and then we have our fire and movement controls. GetPlayer. GetPlayer is just so that the input manager can tell the ship to move, and then the player needs to know of the input manager so that I can call it every update. And this linking of ship and input manager is done in the player manager, which we will again get into in another video.